Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this morning to learn about SmartCharts. This webinar is part of the 2020 Maryland Realtors Thursday webinar series and one of your Maryland Realtor benefits. Today's webinar will be recorded and available on our website later this week. Our presenter this morning is Nathan Murray, broker-owner of RE/MAX Executive. If you have questions during the presentation, please submit them in the question box on the right side of your screen. Questions will be posed to the presenter anonymously. Thank you, and let's begin.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nathan Murray, and I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about SmartCharts. I'm going to give you essentially the same presentation I give to my agents and coach them on how to use SmartCharts to have better conversations with clients and provide content for social media posts, mailings, a variety of marketing pieces. So I'm going to jump in and ask a couple of quick questions, and I think we're going to do this via poll. If you could let us know how many years you've been in the business, new to the business, under 5, or been around a little while, over 5. You should have the question up on your screen shortly.
Nathan, so far it looks like 2/3 have been in the business for over 5 years, and the remaining third about under 5 years.
Awesome. And we've got one more question for you, and it's, have you ever used SmartCharts before? Have you logged in and used it or not?
And again, it looks like we're pretty well split. About 2/3 have not used SmartCharts, and another approximately third has used the product before.
Great, let's jump into this. So SmartCharts is a product that Bright has partnered with. It's one of the prospecting tools. So if you click on the market research tab from your Bright dashboard, you can get to SmartCharts Pro. For many of you, and let me show you what this looks like. For many of you, this is a product provided by your board. So if you go to getsmartcharts.com, go to the pricing tab, you'll see if it's not provided, it's $24 a month or $200 a year. If you're a member of one of these associations, it is provided for you as a member benefit. I was a member of SmartCharts long before the board started paying for it. I found value in it. I paid for it for several years. And then thank you to ACAR, they picked up the bill and have been providing it for a lot of years at this point. But most members are covered by one of these boards and have access to it. So go ahead and click sign me up and create your account. And this is what the SmartCharts dashboard looks like. And we're going to go through these tools kind of one at a time, and then we're going to get into a lot of detail on the chart side for how you use this data and how you use the information, or how I encourage you to use it. Across the top, you've got 3 tabs. You've got your dashboard, you've got your charts view, you've got your reports, you've got a My Account thing up here. It's how you reset your password. There's not much going on up there. You've got December 2019. Statistics come out for the previous month on or about the 12th. So these stats probably came out for December around the 12th of January, and they're pretty consistent with that. So you will not be able to pull last month's numbers until 10 to 14 days into the next month. But they give you this dashboard view, fuel gauge view, whatever you want to call it here. And it's for the entire Mid-Atlantic region. Now, mostly I don't want to look at the entire Mid-Atlantic region. I look at a specific county. For the vast majority of the time for me, that's Anne Arundel County. And it will give me some stats on December. It'll give me the closed sales for December, what the 5-year average is for December. So the 5-year average is shown in green. The December 2019 number is shown with the arrow. So a pretty strong settlement month, pretty strong new pendings month, very low active listing count, very low month supply of inventory. You can scroll through and see a bunch of different charts. And the reason this is here is really so that you can embed it in your website. For those of you that are a little bit more tech savvy, if you run a blog or a website, you can actually embed this in your website using the HTML code. We're not going to go through that today. Most of you will not use it. It's kind of a cool little feature. It's a cool toy, but those of you that know how to do it, there's the copy and paste code. Going down, we see the spotlight. It gives us December and year-to-date numbers for whatever area we've chosen. So our total sold dollar volume is up 53% year over year. Closed sales were up 35% year over year. So from December of last month. This is just a quick view of Anne Arundel County for the month of December. Down below, they break it down by cities. I don't personally find this section very useful, and I'll tell you why. Most cities do not have enough closed transactions in any given month to give you an accurate representation statistically. If you've got a city and there's 10 or 15 or 20 closings even, and a really, really high-end property sells, or a really, really low-end property, that one transaction, because the transaction count is so low, will skew your numbers. So when I work with SmartCharts, I mostly work at a county level. There are some cities, Annapolis, for instance, there is enough data there to make it useful. In our area, Pasadena is another one that has enough transactions that you can go down to the city level and pull some decent information. SmartCharts gives you the option of a subdivision. I have not found that to be helpful for most of the stats that I use, because again, there's just not enough data. You'll see large gaps where there were maybe no settlements in a month, and then your year over year number is dramatically skewed, or your month over month number. It gets less helpful. So we're going to work at the county level today for the most part. I'm going to use Anne Arundel County because it's what I'm familiar with. You can change counties or locations here at any time just by typing in.
Nathan, is the cities reported, is that attached to the zip code?
It is, and you can actually do it either way. So you could do it by zip code. So you could do Annapolis, and it would do all of Annapolis if you choose city. Or if you want to look at a specific zip code in Annapolis, you would choose that here. So again, I want as much data as possible so that I get some kind of statistical average. I'm going to go with a larger area. You're not using SmartCharts to price a particular home. I don't find it helpful for that. I don't find it helpful for determining value or pulling. It's not a comp tool. It really is just a market analytics tool that helps you have better conversations. And then when we get into the charts, have a visual representation of a concept. And I'm going to show you a bunch of those, but to be able to visually show someone why something you're saying is accurate or true, and help change their or shift their perception a little bit.
And so before you move on, I have one more question on the phone about the zip codes. Can you put in the location there, can you put multiple zip codes if you're just looking for a certain section of Annapolis, for example?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
So, and again, if you narrow what I found is if you narrow your geography down too small, there won't be enough data to make sense. And I'll show you an example of that when we get to the charts. So I'm going to skip over charts right now, and I'm going to go to reports, and then we'll come back and we will finish up in the charts, because that's where we're going to spend the most time. There are two reports that SmartCharts will generate for you. Again, I'm in Anne Arundel County, but you can be in any county or in any city. The yearly report is great, especially if you want to do a city. But let's look at what you've got. You've got a monthly report. I want the December 2019 reports. Let's take a look at that. It downloads as a PDF. And let me zoom in there a little bit. And it will give you a bunch of statistics. Sold dollar volume for December versus the same month last year and the change, average sold price and the change, median sold price And again, what we were up year over year. Units sold, average days on market. This is a useful figure to know. Average list price to sold price for solds. Average sold price to original list price. OLP stands for original list price. So we know that December of 19, the average home in Severna Park, in Anne Arundel County that sold at 95.2% of its original list price. Average for attached homes, detached homes, number of attached units sold, number of detached units sold. There's some other useful information on this particular report. I find the inventory levels to be very useful. So we ended December 19 with 1,524 active listings in Anne Arundel County, which in my memory in 18 years is by far the lowest active listing count we've ever had. We brought on 529 new listings in December, but we sold 721. New pendings, all pendings. The financing portion's rather interesting as well. When you're trying to explain to maybe an FHA buyer or even a conventional buyer, 100 of those transactions, 100 of the 721 transactions were cash transactions. They do exist, they are out there, and they're out there in a larger number than I think most people realize. Days on market for solds, we'll get more into this in a different view. And then it breaks down the sold detail, detached and attached, 2 bedrooms or less, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. So you can kind of get a feel for what is the common, right? Not only size of home, but price of the home. I find the charts much more useful for this information, and we will get to that.
Now, this statistical report that you're showing here, can it be broken out per zip code? And you did say neighborhood. You haven't found that to be particularly valuable, correct?
Yes, let me give you an example. So if I did Severna Park, and I did this same report, the monthly report, Severna Park's kind of in the middle there. Let's see how many transactions. There were only 28 transactions in Severna Park in December of 2019. The problem I find is with only 28 transactions, if you had a $2 million waterfront settle in Severna Park in December, it skews this number pretty dramatically because there aren't enough transactions to level out those high-end transactions and the low-end transactions. There's some useful information here. What I do find useful are the year-end reports. So you can look at this year-to-date, you can look at it quarterly, and then yearly. So I can look at Severna Park as an entire year. Now we have enough data, because we have 439 closings, to have a little bit more faith in the average sales price, the median sold price, average days on market, right? Now we have enough data that these stats are a little bit more reliable. So this would be a market report for the entire year in Severna Park.
In your opinion, what's a fair amount of information or data to get good numbers there? Like how many transactions? Do you have any feeling?
Really, I think it's 100 in a month. If you have fewer than 100, I wouldn't personally. I'm not a stats, I don't have a degree in statistics.
Sure.
I have found if you don't have somewhere around 100 transactions, you get these anomalies that don't make sense. And when we get into the charts, you'll actually see that. I'll show you what that looks like. Because normally you're seeing pretty clear trend lines, up, down, flat. And when you get into a small data set, you will see huge jumps up and down month by month that just don't match reality. So I'll show you that when we get to charts. But the year-end report for a particular neighborhood is a great report to look at. The local market insight report, so I can look at this by all properties, detached properties, attached townhomes, condos. I always look at it by all properties. Again, I'm going to look at December. and I'm still in Severna Park. All right, it's going to give me new listings, new pendings, closed sales, which is great information to have, but I wouldn't use, you know, the median sold price or the year-to-date numbers are fine. I don't know that I would use the average sold price or the average days on market from 1 month if there's only 28 closed transactions. Now, if I go back and pull this for Anne Arundel County, and I look at this local market insight report, now I've got 12,900 transactions year to date, new listings, new pendings, 9,873 closed sales. This data is spread out over a much, much larger pool of data, and I find it to be much more representative of the market in general. And this is a useful report to look at every month. I give this out in my meetings every month because it gives you your year over year. What's our listing count look like? What's our new pending count look like compared to where we were at the same time last year? So our new listing count is down 1/8 of a point. Our new pendings are down 1.5 points. Our closed sales are up 8.3%. That's what's driving this lack of inventory that we're dealing with right now. Average days on market is down to 50. The 5-year average for December is 61. So in 5 years, that's the lowest days on market we've seen in Anne Arundel County. Our average sold price to original list price ratio is 96.6%. That's the highest we've seen of any December in the last 5 years, and probably the last 10 years. The average now, being 5.3.
It's interesting that you bring up that this is a particular piece of information that you use in your office meetings, because one of our listeners asked, what tools do you have for brokers? So maybe as you move through this presentation, if there are elements that are particularly useful for broker office managers, you could point those out.
Yeah, I mean, both of these reports go out to all of my agents every month. They are a quick hit. They're easy to look at, easy to understand. Number one question we're asked in this business by potential new clients or just people in our world is, how is the market? And what I find is that a lot of agents answer that question. The answer they give is dependent on how their last transaction went. And when you use this information, one, the answer is always, well, it depends on if you're a buyer or a seller, right? Because they're two different sides of the fence. But you can actually give them, well, you know, it's pretty amazing. December, we saw the highest sellers got more money for their house as a percentage than they ever had in the last 5 years. Shortest days on market, homes sold very quickly, lowest inventory in 5 years. You can start giving people some very specific, actionable information. And that's what I find these helpful for, just keeping you on top of what's the reality in the marketplace. Did we realize that, you know, there's been 9,800 closings, 9,873 closings in Anne Arundel County this year. That's up 8.3%. There is a consensus that more deals are falling apart right now. I hear that a lot from agents. More deals are falling apart. Well, our new pending count was down this year, but our closed sales count was up. So statistically, more deals aren't falling apart than last year. We're doing more business, which I think is why it feels that way. But there's just some interesting information you can garner from this. There are no specific tools in this program that are available to brokers and not available to anybody else. All of the program is the same. It's available to everybody. So any other questions on the reports?
This is kind of an opinion one. Are SmartCharts a good tool to use on social media? So I guess taking snapshots of this information and using it in marketing.
Absolutely. I would not do that from here because these are PDFs. But when we get into charts, you can share and post all kinds of information, and I'm going to go through that in a good amount of detail. That's
okay, and another question I have that's very specific. Will the percentage be off if the property was listed by more than one agent if price was lowered several times? Does that...
So list price to sold price ratios are the sold price versus the original list price of that listing. So yes, if a property was listed by agent A at 1.5 million and it was on the market for 6 months, and then it came off the market and it went back on at 1.1 million and then it sold, it would be the ratio of the sold price to the 1.1 million of that listing period. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So yes, it's possible that there are properties that were on the market before that failed to sell. So these are only looking at sold properties, and they're using the original list price from that listing period. That was a good question.
And is there a way to use these smart charts via email with links for people to click on?
Yes. So again, let's jump into charts because that's going to answer a lot of these questions.
Excellent, thank you.
So this is what the charts tab looks like, and this is where we're going to spend a decent amount of time. This is where you can have the most fun with this program. Okay. Again, you can change your location right here at the top. And this is what you're all going to see when you click on charts. This is where it goes. It goes to market activity and it goes to closed sales. And I can look at actual values. So for instance, we're going to see that same 721, right? That's how many settlements we had in December in Anne Arundel County. And it's going to show me the change from December of last year. I can switch my view right here to just see that change. So I can see year over year that for September, October, November, and December, we closed more transactions in Anne Arundel County for 4 months in a row than we did in the fourth quarter last year, right? That's a useful way of looking at the data, is to see how did we do compared to last year. So the fourth quarter numbers, when they come out from whatever news media outlet, whatever they pull their numbers from, are going to show a pretty huge fourth quarter. Now, we were comparing it to a very weak fourth quarter last year as far as unit counts go. But the news is going to be real estate ended the year on a great note. Going back to actual values, we can look at this data as a bar graph. We can look at it as a line graph. We can look at just the straight data, okay? We can go back up to 10 years and see trend lines, right? You see the seasonality of each year. And you also see that in 2010, we barely got above 500 units. We did for 3 months, really 1 month. And in 2019, we surpassed the 750 number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months out of the year. So it gives you a pretty good snapshot of what's happened in our marketplace. I can look at new pendings, all pendings, new listings, active listings. So here's what new listings look like. Again, you see that same seasonality, but you see a general increase over the last 10 years. Now, what can I do with this information? So market activity, let's say I want to go to close sales and I want to talk about how great the fourth quarter was. And I want to do that on Facebook or my blog or whatever this scenario is. So one, I could group this data together by quarters. So I could compare the fourth quarter of 2019 to the fourth quarter of 2018. And I could do a post about how third quarter was up 13.4% in closed sales. Fourth quarter was up 16%. I can grab this chart, I can download it as a PDF. I can embed it if I do a blog or I do a website. Now on the embed, you've got two options. You've got a couple options, but you have two that matter. The auto update version will, wherever you put this information, be it in a blog post or be it in a website, it will continually update. So when we get to the end of Q1 2020, it will update and show that data. The problem with that is if you write a blog post that says something about the data and 6 months from now someone looks at it and the data has changed, your chart doesn't match your copy. So if you're writing copy or you're writing a post about a specific set of data, go ahead and fix the date range that the data doesn't change on you. If you wanted to create a market update web page on your site and you wanted to show this information and not have to go back and update it over and over and over again, then you use the auto update version, right? So ways people have used this is, let's say you do have a farm and you have a neighborhood website for that community and you want to post some market information on that community. You could go down to the subdivision and you could pull some of these charts and you could embed them into your site, choose the auto update, and it will update the information for you and you don't have to go back and touch it. If you're writing an opinion piece, right, make sure you fix that date range so that the data does not change on you. You can also just simply share it, right? And now I can share it to Facebook, Twitter, I can print it out, I can email it, I can send it to any of these places. Very, very easy. I could also just copy and paste this link and send it out to someone. This is not a particularly thrilling chart to share. We're going to get into some better ones, but that's how the functionality of this works. If I wanted to compare locations, so I could take and add Queen Anne's County. Let's say I wanted to show a buyer the difference in pricing, right? So pricing trends between two counties. So now I'm looking at median sold sales price between Anne Arundel County at $355 in the fourth quarter, which was up 5%, and Queen Anne's County, which was $344, but was up 7.5%. I could show those two counties side by side. This is a very cool feature. So let's work through the rest of these. We've got market activity, and I'm going to go back to months. I'm going to get my view cleaned up here. Closed sales, new pendings, all pendings, new listings, active listings. Does anybody have any questions about kind of how you can navigate just this first tab, how you can share things, and then the change from actual numbers, actual values to the previous year before we move on?
The only question I see that you've not addressed yet is there a market share component to the data?
There is not. As far as market share for individual agents or brokerages, there is not.
The question does not specify, but okay. Yeah, that's what they were asking. So there is not a component.
No, SmartCharts does not do market share.
Okay.
So I could also, to take it one step further, I can sort this data and I can limit this data by sold days on, why aren't these working? Days on market, living area, bedrooms, baths. I can look at sold prices and break down my categories. Where you'll find this helpful is in some of these additional options. So market activity is 1, pricing trends is 2. So median sold sales price. Again, I like that change from the previous year. So I can see that for the last 12 months, we've gone up, been flat, gone up, 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 flat, up, 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 flat, up. We've had no months with a decline in the median sold sales price in Anne Arundel County compared to last year. That's an interesting piece. If you look at this again over a 10-year period, you see the trend lines of when the market's doing well, when the market wasn't doing so well. Here here, and then we recovered. It gives you, again, just a good benchmark, a good base of knowledge to have a conversation. I could also look at average sold, median list, average list. The one we use a lot is pricing ratios. And I'm going to show you how we use this. So this is the last 10 years, and this is median sold price as compared to original list price. So back in 2010, it looks like we were pulling 92.5%. At the highest, we were at 95% of list price. These days, in May, settlements in May, we're 99.4% of list price. Much more competitive market, much more restricted inventory. Sellers are getting more of their list price than they were, and you see this gradual trend line, and it's pretty consistent. If I want to look at this over the course of a year, I can see when it peaks. So one of the things that I always like to point out is traditional real estate says the best time to put your house on the market is maybe April or May, right? When the flowers are out and the yard is pretty. The peak, and this is pretty consistent year after year, the peak of average list price to sold price is usually in May. So those are listings that came on the market in February or March and settled in May. Once the inventory flood hits, you see that demand drop a little bit, and August we also had 99%, but we were 99.4 in May. Last year the peak was in May at 99%. The year before that, April, May, 98.6, 98.5, 98.6. I point this out because I think it's a great way to have a conversation with a seller in January or February about the importance of getting their house on the market sooner than maybe they had intended to. Because statistically, they will get more of their list price in that period. So that's a pretty great piece. The other way we like to use this pricing ratio is median sold to original list price. So I'm actually going to go down to quarters so we have a little bit more room. And I'm going to go to days on market. We all know as professionals that the longer your home sits on the market,
now, while you're doing this sort, there was a question about how far back in years can you go with the data. It looked like when you drop down, it was 10 years. Okay.
10 years.
And can the PDFs or other charts be customized with a brand, logo, etc.?
You know, I don't actually think so. The Facebook posts go up on your page, so they are branded, but I don't think the PDFs can.
Okay.
So let me show you this because I think this is pretty awesome. So median sold price to original list price ratio. And again, I'm going to look at this over 1 year, and I'm going to look at it by quarters to again give me more room. So in the fourth quarter, the average home seller received 98.3% of their list price. We can look at this by days on market. So this is something we all know as professionals, is that the longer your home sits on the market, the less money you get, right? Conveying that to a seller or a client, us just telling them doesn't seem to carry much weight most of the time, right? But we can show them this graph, and we can actually demonstrate to them that we see a common trend here. And I like to look at this graph. I would post this graph, but I would also post the actual data that shows in the fourth quarter of 2019, average seller got 98.3%. The seller that sold, that went under contract in the first 10 days, got 100% of their list price. From 11 to 21 days, they got 99.6% of their list price. 21 days, 98.6. 30 to 60 days, 97.1%. 60 to 90, 95. After 90 days, they're now to 93% of their list price. And that number is pretty consistent over the last year. And in fact, if we went out 2 years, it would be pretty consistent there as well. After 121 days, we're at 93, 94, 94, 94, right? This is a great visual way to show them the costs associated with overpricing and allowing their house to sit and linger on the market and become stagnant. This is a great piece to either download and put into a listing presentation, or so you can have that conversation and actually give them data to your local market. Again, when you pull this by a county, in all the larger counties, that data should show up in a very similar fashion. But being able to break this out is awesome. The other thing we've noticed is there is a weakness right now in the higher end market. We're not seeing the higher end market grow price-wise at a pace that we are, let's say, the entry-level market. In our area, that would be, you know, the 3 to 550, 600 seems to be doing just fine. The over 8, over $1 million is struggling a little bit. So we can show that as well by looking at, in Anne Arundel County, homes from 2 to 4 to 500,000 did pretty well, 98, 99, 98, 97. Homes over $1 million, 93.2% of their original list price.
Now, speaking of different market segments, is there an opportunity for using this program in these charts for rental units?
I don't believe they do rentals. I've never seen. Quite honestly, I don't know if rentals are included in the 50,000 or below. I don't think they are. I think it's just sold property. But okay, this is, again, a very useful tool. Some of us are in areas where one particular price of home is doing very well, and maybe the area that's 100,000 more or 200,000 more is a different marketplace. This is a great way to be able to demonstrate that visually and give them the data to actually come to that conclusion on their own. So those are the two that we use out of this sold price to original list price chart. We use those pretty regularly.
And I think you may have gone over this, although perhaps it was in a different segment, about comparing two areas such as Anne Arundel and Howard County. Can that be done with
down here at the bottom? So I can, if I wanted to compare Howard, for instance, with Anne Arundel, and I wanted to look at pricing ratios, I could show that in Howard County in the fourth quarter, it was 98.5%, 98.3, pretty similar. But I can put those side by side simply by adding those locations here. And you could do 2 cities, you could do 2 counties side by side. Actually, I think you could add more. When you start adding additional areas, or you want to look at a bunch of different metrics here, now you lose the ability to sort by price. But it helps to also put the data into quarters so it lumps it together and gives you a little bit more room. So that's pricing ratios. Pricing trends we went through, that gives you median sold sales, active listings, average and median. Days on market.
That they can't see the option to toggle the different sold prices and days on market.
So if they've added a location, if they've added a compare location, you lose that functionality. So I can add list prices, but only on one area at a time. So they might need to come down here and click that reset that shows up when you've compared locations and get back the ability to sort by price.
Excellent.
Days on market, again, a pretty neat tool to show not just the seasonality of our market, but how we're doing compared to last year. And here you can really get into by price. So again, let's go to that quarter view and look at what the average days on market may be for a different market, right? So, and again, when you've got to do this on a large area, if I did this in Severna Park, for instance, and there was only one home that sold over $1 million in that quarter, that would be the only data I had. It's one property. It's not a statistical average. So you want to do these kinds of reports in large geographic areas. But I can see average days on market. I'm going to get rid of that over $1 million. We're going to look at 300 to 999. And I can see, again, a clear trend here between days on market in the different price ranges. And I could find the data I wanted to find and then again, download, embed, or share that, or just change the view to come up with a different view. Price per square foot, I find this not useful at all, primarily not because of SmartCharts, but because they use what Bright uses, which is the taxable square footage, which in our county at least is the above grade square footage only, so it doesn't take into consideration basements. That will dramatically skew the numbers on split foyers, for instance, where half the living area is below grade. I do not use the price per square foot out of Bright, and I don't use it out of SmartCharts, quite honestly, because I just don't find it accurate. Not a problem of Bright or SmartCharts. I think it's the counties they're getting the data from, because they all calculate their square footage differently, and I don't know that there's a way for Bright to account for that, but we'll move past that one. Supply and demand is another great tool, and let me show you why. So we're going to look at month supply of inventory, and we're going to look at it by months. So we ended the month of December. We had a very high closing count and a very low listing count, so our month supply of inventory dropped to 1.85. If you're trying to convey to a client, a buyer, and or a seller kind of where our market has been over the last 10 years, show them this graph, because it's pretty dramatic in not only the seasonality of it, but where we were in maybe 2013 when they bought their last home versus where we are now as far as inventory and demand. So this is a simple supply and demand. Month supply of inventory is if no new listings came on the market, none at all, and listings continued to sell at the pace they sold in that month, how many months before you would run out of listings to sell? So in the month of December, again, we were at 1.85. A traditional, at least what I was always taught, a neutral market was considered 6 to 7 months supply of inventory. I actually personally think that's closer to 5, maybe even 4.5 at this point. The process of selling a home is sped up. We're getting from contract to close quicker than we used to. I think that 6 to 7 month average that I think a lot of us were taught back in the day is probably a little inflated at this point. We have been under 5 pretty consistently since 2015. And we have seen pretty consistently a seller's market during that period. Now, where this gets interesting is when you start breaking it down again by price. So if I go back to 1 year, and I'm going to look at this by quarters again, and I'm going to start looking at different list prices. So on the whole, we have a 1.85 month supply of inventory in the fourth quarter. Homes from 3 to 4, we actually have a 1.26 month supply of inventory. 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 8 to $1 million. So what we see is the news reports on the market as a whole. The news reports on this blue number, right? This guy up here at 850K sees the news report of how amazing the real estate market is, and then doesn't understand that he is in a completely different market than this guy here at 5 to 6. So 2.85 month supply of inventory in this price range, almost 5 months supply of inventory here. It's a different competitive landscape. It actually improved pretty dramatically in the fourth quarter because it was double for most of the year. So this 800 and above was almost 10 months of inventory. The month before, the quarter before that, quarter 2, 11.44 months supply of inventory. Pretty dramatic shift between a 600 to 800,000 home and a 800 to $1 million home. So again, this is a great system for being able to give a particular seller in a market an idea of not just what the market's doing in his neighborhood, right? Because that's the CMA process, which we all do and we all know, but being able to give a bird's eye view of a market and how it is affected by different price points. We found this very helpful when having conversations with clients and just establishing credibility. You go in as an agent and have this information and understand this information and can convey this information, I think it helps you establish that trust factor, which is vital in a real estate transaction and an agent-client relationship. And this is a great tool to do it. It's free for the vast majority of you. I don't work for SmartCharts. I have no skin in this game, but if I was an agent in an area that didn't have it, I would be happy to pay the $200 a year. I did it for years because the data you can pull out of it is very useful for having actual actionable conversations, right? I could grab this graph and I could download it or share it to Facebook, and I could write a post about this data and what it means and explain it to people and break it down. So maybe we write something about how in the fourth quarter, you know, that 800 to $1 million price range in Anne Arundel County stepped up its game and fell more in line with the other price points. That's great news for anyone in that price range, right? If they looked at the market, or maybe they tried to sell in 18 or early 19 and they were in this competitive landscape and now they're in this competitive landscape, that's an opportunity for a new conversation. What other questions do you guys have? I have worked through all of the different metrics here. We've worked through reports, we've worked through the dashboard. I am slowly running out of things to show you, so if you have questions, please put them up.
At this point, there are no more questions from our listeners. This was a lot of really, really great information. Let's see here. Oh, I'm getting a lot of thank yous, and this is awesome. So this is great information. Somebody asks, can you put numbers above the bars?
No, I don't think you can. Which is quite honestly why when I post things, I will normally post the bar graph for the visual effect, and then I will also post the actual data. Some people will get this and love it, and then your engineer types tend to want to see this view. So I will post both. And you could literally just download these, if you click share, and you have this graph, you can right-click on this thing and save it as a picture.
Is SmartCharts available in a mobile version?
I don't believe so. If it is, I'm missing out on it, but I don't believe so. If it is, I'm sure the SmartCharts people are going to light me up, but I don't use it on my phone.
Okay, so at this point, I'm getting a flood of thank yous, and this is awesome, and this is great. And so this information, we appreciate you sharing with us. Very well received. For those of you who are listening who want to come back and review the information, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the Maryland Realtors website within the next few days. So again, Nathan, thank you very much, and thank you to all of our Realtor members for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.